cooperation. I mean, there are different levels of strategic needs and different perspectives toward final stage of trilateral cooperation, and many different issues we have to tackle down. And policymakers and also should have been more skillful at pursuing the trilateral cooperation efforts. And also, when they got to sell that issue to particularly political leaders. So, for example, when the U.S. and Japan announced their revised defense guidelines, the policymakers in 3 countries, U.S., Korea, Japan, they spoke out one voice that Japan will seek an agreement as to when it will exercise its military within South Korean territory. To me, I don't understand why they were focused on sovereign matter, which should not be infringed. I know some of the South Korean policymakers, they were trying to calm down some public concerns, whether it was wrong, although it was wrong. But if that is the reason for South Korean policymakers to take that action, that reflects there are more serious problems with South Korean policymakers' views to deal with the trilateral issues.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. I don't know, Mr. Kim, you're a businessman, but do you like Japanese?
Well, when we do have a lot of problem in the businesses, sometimes externally, but also internally, when we need more coordination, cooperation among different business units and different functions. And one of the practical solutions that we use, really, I'm not joking, is to bring everybody in one room and lock them up and have them talk to each other all the time until they find a solution. And that really works. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I can, or anybody can bring Korean, Japanese, and U.S. officials into one room and lock them up. But if we can create more conversation, discussions at the working level, that would definitely do some good work to trilateral cooperation. And also, I think I agree with Professor Easily, which is that leadership should do no harm to that kind of cooperative spirit at the working level. As I mentioned, when we try to create partnership, what is really important is, of course, self-interest is important, but shared interest is also important. But shared value compared to shared interest is very, very important. But between these 3 countries, I see shared values at the end of the day, and trust may be achievable. And if that is the case, then the working level people, if they're given the opportunity to talk to each other and work out a solution to any problems or challenges, I am pretty confident that they can work out a solution. But the leadership should do no harm to that kind of cooperative spirit.
That's right. So with the political signal, Abe and President Park, I call icy queen, and then the very strange emotional nationalists get together and saying that we overcome the past, let's signal, and they get together. I had actually experience in 1997 working for the Kurt Campbell, Assistant Secretary of Inside the Pentagon. We had a TCOG meeting to manage North Korean Daepodong and nuke crisis. And Kurt asked me, we have to manage Koreans and Japanese sit down together to help. I said, no problem. We will meet in Seoul. So I said, the first thing is that put them in the karaoke room with lots of whiskey. They really bonded, smoked, drank, and sang, and the next morning the meeting was beautiful. So in that sense, I definitely agree with Mr. Kim. Now, let me move slightly away from whatever Japan, US, and Korea-centric question. I think the Korea has made great contributions to global conflicts. I don't know how much you are aware of it, but Iraq, Afghanistan, and all this, the East Timor, and the Koreans, and even in the
Gulf of Aden.
yeah, that all it's Koreans, the Korean reputation of the Korean forces are really formidable, and even in Africa, and the contribution were great. But there will be more potentially skirmishes and hot flashpoints, not far away in the Iraq and Afghanistan, but maybe in East China Sea, in South China Sea. And it's a very sensitive area. Somebody, I think, in the previous panel mentioned Korea is a very Korean peninsula-centric worldview. That's not our issue. But in this kind of area, if Korea has to play more role, so-called partnership, particularly, let's say, Korean Navy ship somehow ended up to be in the middle of the ocean where the conflict is occurring, and U.S. ships stranded, and maybe somehow they have an engineering problem. So in that case, somehow that partnership means that you help each other because it's an ally's duty. So I'm expecting more of this kind of role is requested by the U.S. particularly. That's actually the real partnership in terms of a conflict management. So do you have any taking on this question? Is Korea will do well, or Korea will avoid it, or Korea will be evasive, or Korea will be gung-ho to help? Let's start with Mr. Kim.
I think it depends, really, what kind of action Korea is asked to take on. Korea has its own set of diplomatic goals, foreign policy goals, and there are actions that Korea can easily take. There are actions that Korea cannot really take, not because we disagree with partnership, but because the circumstances under which Korea is placed may make Korea to feel it more burdensome or complicated. So, for example, certain action that the U.S. might ask Japan to take on can be very difficult for Korea to take on. But it doesn't mean that Korea doesn't want to share the burden or take partnership seriously. So there should be, I think, a ongoing dialogue. Once again, we should lock them up and figure out what Korea can really do to advance the partnership. If each party is not really sensitive to the needs and hearts of the other party, then it is not a true partnership.
Thank you. How about Mr. Ba?
Yeah, I fully agree with his opinions, and in following up from different perspectives, I mean, the best thing is not to get involved in those a situation we do not want. But it depends on case by case. I think the Korea is not accustomed to manage its relationship with neighboring countries, or some countries might have some strategic stake on the Korean Peninsula. Diplomatic flexibility should be maintained so that our partners, even our allies, can view South Korea's diplomatic stance as a variable, not a constant element. So in some sense, there should be nothing taken for granted from their perspective, not from our perspective. So like now, the Park Geun-hye administration pursue so-called middle power diplomacy. I mean, there could be many things we have to pursue to become real middle power. The one of the things I can say is, okay, we can say yes and we can say no. Not depending on, not looking to others before making our own decision. So that's the one thing. And then the South China Sea and East China Sea, that issue, within our capacity, I think the Korea should be able to speak up.
Thank you. That's a good statement.
Yeah, for respecting international norms and rules, not for the interest of U.S. or China or other countries.
Excellent. Eric?
I would agree that that's probably around the expectation that many, both inside and outside of Korea, have for Korea's role. Your contingencies that you were alluding to, I think, are probably beyond expectations of what ROK forces would do. I don't think there are many who expect ROK forces to be involved regarding the Spratlys or Taiwan contingency. But it is important that as a middle power and as a U.S. ally, that South Korea has its voice with its interests regarding the defense of international norms. And while some Korean friends may say, well, the South China Sea is far away and issues or other contingencies are far away, I would say that Korea's voice on international norms is incredibly important because it has interests in that international normative system. And ultimately, while there may be concerns about offending other relevant powers that have importance to South Korea's primary security issue vis-a-vis North Korea, when you look far down the road, when South Korea will need international support on unification or Korean integration, I think that international norms will be incredibly important. So Korea's excellent record in contributing to international norms, I think, will be an asset not only to its own reputation and the forthcoming cooperation of partners, but also in terms of holding various actors to a high standard in their relations and their roles on the Korean Peninsula.
Okay, I will skip a couple of small things, but I have one last question. To a certain extent, the U.S. was a part of the division of Korean Peninsula, and the legacy still continues. And we are now talking about foundation of unification. I hope that at least the basic foundation is done so I can visit my parents' country in Pyongyang before I die. By the way, I'm not that very young age, so I'm hoping that things are evolving fairly rapidly. But nonetheless, U.S. forces provided, regardless of some anti-American sentiment or some sour situation, really the anchor and foundation deterring all the threats from North Korea, providing the sense of stability and security to the Korean people, and role is still critically important. When this unification process and preparation and some of the, let's say, even a positive dialogue between North and South Korea is going on, there gotta be some unique role of U.S. forces, and the role can be either positive or negative. And it's a little bit stupid question, but do you see the U.S. forces' role, either preparation stage, transformation, post-unification? What's the positive role and what's the potential negative role?
I think it's indisputably positive because the U.S. forces Korea will have a stabilizing role. It'll have a partnership role. It could have a logistical support role, certainly contributing to stability on an integrating Korean peninsula. The caveat, of course, is that if at the time when we come to a stage of Korean integration that could lead to unification, if at that time U.S.-China relations are strained, then it would certainly be a concern on the part of Seoul that China's role in that process on the Korean Peninsula would not be as positive as it could or should be. And so I think that's why you see South Korea having a very keen interest not only in strengthening the alliance with the United States, but establishing an understanding in Beijing, including trust, but also an understanding that a Korean integration process led by Seoul would be beneficial to Chinese interests, and that the U.S.-Korea alliance is going to be ready to coordinate with China on shared interests in the region.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Anybody taking?
I can see more. I can see more of the positive aspects of the alliance and USFK, less of the negative aspects of the alliance and USFK. If there is any negative aspects of the alliance and USFK, I think that's because of like a political leader's decision, not by like a USFK or the laws and missions of the alliance. And also there is Korean saying, more haste, less speed. So like at the recent summit, there is some statement to intensify high-level, some strategic consultation to create favorable environment for peaceful reunification. It sounds good, and it's not clear to me because back in 2009, there was also a statement between President Obama and at the time, then President Lee Myung-bak. And I mean, although there is change of government in South Korea, some working level officials from both governments, they do not do what they are supposed to do in following up the statement agreed by the leaders of Korea and the U.S. That's why, like what's being said at the recent statement, intensify something strategic consultation, it does not clear to me. So I think more in South Korea, but also in the Washington, every administration is trying to have its own policy. And particularly in South Korea, like the president is trying to have some, like his or her own, some policy legacy on like North Korean issues. So from that perspective, rather than intensify and strengthen what we are doing, we have to focus on maintaining and keeping up some strategic consistency in dealing with North Korea.
Okay. Excellent. Now the lock the room businessman, what's your final word?
I think there's no doubt that USFK serves as a sort of tangible, physical, touchable guarantee of the stability in the Korean Peninsula. There's no question about that. At the same time, like everything else, especially in business, there will be cost-benefit analysis. And we're making that analysis every time, every day, every hour in the business. And it cannot be, in the foreign policy, diplomatic area as well, it cannot be just, this is absolutely positive all the time. There is no such thing. There will be cost-benefit analysis, and as situations change, we'll see different types of cost-benefit analysis. And the policymakers in both countries should be able to sell this cost-benefit analysis to the general public in a better way. And in the U.S., as you have seen, there have been some comments about the need to maintain USFK in the presidential campaign. And it's not going to be just one person asking that question. We're going to, whether or not speak loudly or just thinking in our own heads, we're asking all those questions constantly. And once again, we are selling almost everything every day, right? I'm selling marriage to my wife every day whenever I go out of my house.
Thank you.
But unless we can do that better, I think we're going to face a more serious cost-benefit analysis.
Excellent. I think that was a very wise businessman's last word. And we only have 15 minutes left. I don't want to take away your pleasure to have a cocktail reception, because you've been sitting in this stuffy room with such patience. Now I will open the floor. To be very nice, precisely say, I'm James Brown. I have one question. No long statement, please, okay? So let's open the floor. Ladies, hand there, right there. Yes.
My name is Won-Kyong. I have one question. The President Park's visit was accompanied by a huge business delegation, nearly 100 businessmen. having a meeting with American business people to build positive economic partnership. And according to the Washington Post, this delegation was formed because Korean economy was really bad, and it shows President Park's concern about the situation. And my question is, how, especially the Samsung man, how do you appraise President Park and her administration's ability to handle this frail economy, and the outcome of that handling would have on international partnership and peace in that region? Thank you.
Well, you're asking me to make an assessment about President Park's domestic economic policy. That is a dangerous territory that I don't want to get into. I know there are 2 cameras right there, so probably I should not make a comment about that. But what I can tell you, though, is that in diplomacy, everything, it's not just dialogue between the 2 presidents. It's not just dialogue between diplomats. It's not just dialogue between government officials and so on and so forth. But there are millions of other ways to build a stronger relationship, and economic relationship is definitely an important aspect to it. So having a larger economic delegation in the U.S., I don't think it means that the Korean economy is in dire situation. We want to get something out of the trip right away, but I think it sends a signal to a lot of people. Having an economic delegation in the U.S. trying to build a stronger economic relationship sends signal to a lot of people around the world. And for that purpose, I think the delegation served its purpose well. And you probably know that the economic delegation coincided with what is called U.S. Korea Business Council meeting, in which both the U.S. businessmen and Korean businessmen gathered together once again in a locked up room and talk about policy issues as well as business issues. And that sort of stronger ties among business sectors really serves as a linchpin to building a stronger U.S.-Korea relationship.
That's the reason why he's a Samsung president here, vice president. Now I have a blue lady here, raise a hand. So please, Duyan.
Hi, so I'm actually, it's not my question, it's the question from the media. And they are asking, and this is their exact question for all 3 speakers, and they're asking, President Obama said that he would like South Korea to speak out if China does not abide by international rules and norms. And this reporter is asking, what exactly does that mean?
Gee.
That's their question.
Who can take that?
Well, I think I've said already that South Korea has a great interest in the international normative and international legal environment. And I think as a middle power and a U.S. ally, it has a voice, a very important voice to share on a number of these issues. That doesn't mean that anyone, including President Obama, expects South Korea to raise some sort of anti-China banner. I don't think that's the expectation whatsoever. However, I think Korea speaking out for international normative compliance is important. And allow me to add that sometimes actions speak louder than words. And if South Korea determines that it's in its national interest to cooperate with the United States in hosting THAAD batteries in South Korea, then that's something that the South Korean government can come out and make a plan to do. If South Korea has concerns about Russia's role in Ukraine, but feels some sensitivity about speaking about Russia in particular, there are things that South Korea can do in terms of loan guarantees for Korean companies' investment in Ukraine. It can be very helpful for the Ukrainian economy without speaking out too loudly on political issues that it finds sensitive. And on the maritime security issues, there are things that South Korea can do, like increased trilateral maritime cooperation with the United States and Japan, starting with search and rescue and then perhaps going from there. That can send an important signal about domain awareness, about shared interests in sea lanes of communication, and about freedom of navigation without having to speak out in some way that would be controversial for other interests that are important for South Korea.
Mr. Bak, do you have any points?
And like as already I said, regardless of whether it is South Korea is U.S. ally or not, South Korea should be able to speak up for respecting international rules and norms. And I think the South Korea is working on it, and might be like timing and manner might be different.
If I just want to add, Mr. Kim, you have a point?
No, go ahead, please.
So if I had one point that I've been dealing with Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Singaporeans, Afghans, whatever you name it, for the last 30 years, with the Western Judeo-Christian, the community or the civilization society, speaking your mind is no problem, but a lot of people kind of like, if I speak up, maybe I will not get a visa to visit China or stuff like that, North Koreans as well. But if you are really truly believe that you are right, and you are delivering the statement of justice and right statement, you speak it. One time I was worried that I may not be released from Shanghai to return to Korea, but I was actually invited by Shanghai mayor because they thought that she was the most nasty, but at the same time, honest critic of the Chinese policy. So in a sense, Korea, not middle size, small size, anchovy size, not the size, but if the Korea needs to do something as a sovereign state for the national interest, there should be squeaking voice and raise the voice. That's my policy. Anyway, the gentleman there with the gray shirt. You, that's you. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm a science student. I have a question about USFK. So after unification, do you think USFK should be maintained from both Korean and U.S. perspective?
Mr. Kim first.
To be honest, I don't know. Once again, we don't exactly know how reunification will happen. We don't know if it is going to be done under North Korean initiative or South Korean initiative even. So I think it's premature for us to think about what we're going to do with the USFK. But there have been a history of discussions on what the USFK, what kind of role it can play after reunification, and there will be a basis for further discussion, but I don't think I can make any comments further.
Any of you?
I think if peaceful reunification occurs on the Korean Peninsula, like whether it's going to stay or not, that quite depends on some regional security environment. But if it needs to stay with agreement between Korea and the U.S., the term of reference might be changed.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's up to the interest of a sovereign Korea and the interest of the U.S.-Korea alliance. But to be very frank with you, I think that while we hope for a very gradual integration process with North Korea that's peaceful, that elevates the human rights situation in the northern part of the peninsula, that results in a democratic, free, and free-trading Korean peninsula that gets along with all its neighbors. To be very frank with you, I think that it's not likely to see the current North Korean government decide to give up its control of half the peninsula through an integration process. So in a situation where you start to talk about what's the role of the USFK after unification or during unification, I think there aren't going to be many people saying, Yankee, go home. Because there'll be so many variables in flux. Changing the positioning and the stationing of USFK on the Korean Peninsula is not going to be something that many people are going to think is wise. I think that many Koreans are going to be looking for as much help from the USFK as they can get. They're going to be looking for as much help from the Japanese as they can get. They're going to be looking for support from the World Bank, ADB, Europeans, partners further afield, and certainly Chinese friends. So I don't think it's going to be an issue of is the USFK going to be asked to leave the peninsula during unification or any time soon thereafter. It is important, however, to the extent possible with Beijing, to have conversations about what certain contingencies might look like, so that we don't come to a historical situation of don't cross or don't approach the edge of the precipice kind of perception on the part of the Chinese. And that involves, of course, various roles of forces in various contingencies. And I think if Chinese friends are willing to have that conversation, it's better to have those conversations before a contingency rather than trying to figure it out on the fly.
Thank you. Very wise answers, all three. And then this gentleman with the striped shirt with the white hair. Yes, yeah, you are right. No, I'm just designating so then these helpers will not have any trouble to find you.
Thank you. I actually don't have a new question. I would like to answer to the previous question. Is that allowed?
Well, what is the previous question you are talking about?
Yeah, about whether USFK should stay in Korea after unification. I have been thinking about that a lot, and I have an answer to that. We should declare at early stage that U.S. forces will leave the Korean Peninsula upon unification, because we don't need U.S. forces needed. U.S. alliance, especially military alliance, is needed because of North Korean threat to take over South. Once we have united Korea, we don't really need U.S. to stand against across China hates U.S. forces across the Yellow River. We don't have to have that. So if we say that we are not going to stay, U.S. will not stay after unification, that will promote chances for unification, which both South Korean U.S. governments are seeking for China's help for peaceful unification.
Thank you for your position. You should write a paper and publish in the Washington Post. But the lady with the glasses there, I think maybe this will be the last one, because I don't want to really make you tiptoe on your time. So please go ahead.
Hi, I'm an intern with the Cato Institute. I want to ask Mr. Kim, from your own personal view or the standpoint of your company, do you like to see Korea joining TPP? And also, what are the obstacles for Korea to join TPP?
Yeah, of course. As I think previously mentioned in our closed sessions, TPP is an important initiative that we would like to see as a company. For example, Samsung Electronics is a multinational company, and it does businesses around the world, and its supply chain exists in more than 30 countries around the world. For example, if you want to build a smartphone, we create wafers in Texas Austin facility of ours, then send it to Korea in Gihun, where we make chips. There may be modem chips, graphic chips, but we create the chips, and then we probably send it to China or Vietnam to assemble the smartphone. So if that is the case, as you can see, the supply chain management becomes very complicated, and the rules of origins and different rate of tariffs all makes this management of supply chain very complicated one. But if we can include Korea in the mix, as you can see in the example that I gave, US is included, Vietnam is included. But if Korea is left out, then that creates some serious constraint on our ability to maintain our supply chain seamlessly. So I would definitely like to see Korea joining the TPP. Obstacles to that, I don't really see a lot of obstacles practically. The obstacles that I see is political. So as you have seen, trade, international trade agreements have become a subject of political controversy, maybe too much in both in Korea and in the United States. And if that is the case, and now Korea is separated from the original 12 founding members of the TPP, and it will be under scrutiny by U.S. industries and U.S. Congress separately, that can create a lot of political controversy, and that may be something that the political leaders of both countries should work together to resolve.
Excellent. With the globalization of the manufacturing process, he revealed a little bit. So these three gentlemen really did a wonderful job. In my opinion, they all got A. So let's give a good hand.
Thank you.
Au revoir. All done.